Hello, everybody. It's Jake Gino, host of Jake Gino podcast here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father, six, the best-selling author, the G Daddy, Geno Barber. Gino, how's it going?
Jake, this is going to be an interesting podcast. It's going to be a fun podcast. It's going to bring up a lot of pain for us. And for all of you parents out there, we're talking about scaling a company, but I'd like to make the analogy of a parent who has children. I've got 6 kids, ages 23 to 7, and scaling a family, having a child go from adolescence to adulthood. It's almost as if it's like you're scaling a business. The same things are happening. My 7-year-old, I can't treat her as if she's my 23-year-old. They have different ideas, different thoughts, different way they need to be spoken to. And it's like an inflection point as they grow, getting into teenagehood, getting into adulthood. You start having these conversations differently. You start having a different relationship. What you used 10 years ago doesn't work with what you're doing with them today. And it's the same thing with a company. At certain revenue points, you start scaling up and all the systems you have in place aren't working. What do you need to do? It's okay. Your child's going to get bigger. You just need to learn how to adapt and how to learn and how to create more systems. And when I was reading the book, I was like, wow, this is just like parenting. So I wanted to share that with you, Jake.
Ask me how I'm doing.
How you doing, Jake?
Always making it happen, big man. Today's guest is the director and founder of Simple Scaling Ltd. And co-author of Simple Scaling. Wow. Simple Scaling. I don't know that they actually go together, but we'll find out more here, right? He provides the tools to inspire, connect, and enable ambitious leaders to scale with purpose and fuel growth. So without further ado, Brendan Mcgurgan, welcome to the show.
Jake and Gino, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here today. Lovely to meet you guys.
It is our pleasure. Let's get a little bit, take it back to when you first got started in business and what kicked everything off for you.
Sure, yeah. My father actually was a bookkeeper, and I always remember him coming home in the evenings and bringing the big ledgers home from the car company in which he was a bookkeeper within. I used to sit at the end of the table, and he would allow me to use the calculator, and I suppose that triggered a thirst for business, a thirst for numbers. I went on and became qualified as a chartered accountant, which was really a passport for me into business. And I had my first role in industry as head of finance in a .com business during the late 90s, early 2000s, and the craziness of the .com boom and bust. And then I went into a small engineering company. We had about 15 people at that stage, turning over about $4 million revenue. And the business was primarily based in Ireland. And I became the CEO of that business within 3 or 4 years, a shareholder of that business. And actually, it was mid 2007, and 12 months later, the world collapsed. So I had announced this great grand vision to grow this business to $100 million revenue, and then the world collapsed. Lehman's collapsed, of course, and we had the famous banking collapses in the US. But we navigated through the recession, and I suppose the context and color for the book in terms of my own experience during the next then 11 years, we achieved cumulatively about $750 million. We set up offices in 6 continents, including North America. We had offices in North Carolina and Texas, still do, and exported our products to more than 100 countries globally, employing almost 700 people. So then I retired from that business in late 2019, early 2020, still involved as a non-executive director for the Asian business. But what I reflected on, guys, is during my tenure as CEO, I was caught in a bubble of building this business. Scaling wasn't a thing then. It actually only became into the business lexicon in the last kind of really 8 or 9 years. Whenever we got together as kind of the founder of the business and myself and one of the other shareholders, we had a desire and an ambition to grow the business. Now, I came to the business as a newbie CEO. I hadn't done this before. So I made a huge amount of mistakes. And that really inspired me to reflect whenever I retired from the business, how many businesses out there scale? And how do you go about scaling a business? So there surely should be an easier way. As I say, we made bags of mistakes. And what I found out was actually less than 2% of businesses globally are actually achieving scale. And just to put that in context, and we're talking about small and medium-sized enterprises here, the 99% of businesses globally are small to medium-sized enterprises, and between 60 to 70% of the workforce work for small to medium-sized enterprises. So I was inspired to actually
define that though. What is it? Define meeting scale. It seems a little out there to me. What does that mean like for a company to meet their scale?
So yeah, it's a great question, and there's different definitions. The most common definition is provided by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, and essentially it's averaged annualized growth of 20% year on year for a 3-year period, measured by either employee growth or revenue growth. Essentially, in layman's terms, it's just less than a doubling of the business in either revenue or employees in 3 years.
Got it.
Wow. So I was just going to ask, why do these companies, why do they fail to scale?
That's a great question. And believe it or not, the very first principle of our ScaleX framework is psyche. The last significant piece of research done on this was back in 2015 triggered by a lady called Sherry Coutu, who established a business called Interactive Investor, and a wonderful business actually sold recently for $2 billion. And she founded the Scale Up Institute. Their research asserts that lack of ambition by the leader or founder of the SME business is the single greatest impediment to companies not achieving scale. Now, when you examine that, guys, say, well, hold on, entrepreneurs don't lack ambition. The very nature of entrepreneurs is they're ambitious innately. But what happens is ultimately lack of ambition is the manifestation of fear. It's fear of uncertainty, fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of judgment. And ultimately, that's why we spend a lot of work with the mindset of the leaders and founders in our ScaleX Accelerator program now to actually get under the hood of their mindset and their psyche for scaling. Because
what about fear of more pain? Just because, I mean, even taking a business from 0 to 10 and 10 to 20 employees, how many gut punches can a human take? And I think I think that's probably the root of it. A lot of times people are just like, I don't want any more pain. And the pain's being caused by lack of scale and processes. I believe, but please, comment on that.
You're absolutely right, Jake. And this is why what they need to understand is what got them to here won't get them to there. So what got you to 10 people won't get you to 20 people, won't get you to 50 people. What got you to 50 people won't get you to 150 people. And it's that understanding that at each inflection point, you've got to examine then the principles. Let's take a quick tour of the principles if I can, Jake.
Please.
And so we start with the mindset of the leaders. The 10 principles are aligned to 3 themes: inspire, orientate, and accelerate. Essentially, once we examine the mindset of the leader, and what I assert is if you're already selling a wonderful product or service, then why not bring that to a greater audience? The only reason not to bring it to a greater audience is, back to your point, Jake, is that you feel, well, I've taken enough gut punches with 10 employees to reach 100 customers. I don't want to do this for 1,000. And the paradox in the name Simple Scaling is that what people don't realize is actually scaling will set you free when you're deliberately intentional about your ambition to scale the business and you adapt a different mindset. Then ultimately this will free you from the paralysis and from those gut punches. So we examine the mindset, we move on to purpose and vision. So why did you found this business in the first place? Why does it exist? And where would you like it to go in the future? How do you break out of this paralysis of these existing gut punches? And we take our program participants through a process where we get them to write out the retirement speech in 2032, 10 years time, and just breaking a linear approach where they examine what they've done in the last 3 years, and they kind of might have grown by 7 or 8%, and say, well, look, if it's pretty good for the next couple of years, maybe we can grow by 10%. Break that linear thought pattern and say, what do you want? Forget about what's currently happening. What do you want to happen in 10 years time? If you were standing up on a stage and somebody handed you a glass of champagne and you were acknowledging and celebrating all your successes, what would the company look like? How many people would be in the business? What would customers say about you? What does your brand look like? What do your premises look like? What does your life look like now? Get a vision for that in the very first instance. And then we begin to reverse engineer from there. Now, once you've clarity of where you want to go and why you're going there, then you attract people to want to follow you. People go, there's this war on talent. There isn't a war on talent. There's a war on consciousness. People out there want to follow leaders who have a clear direction of travel, a clear understanding of where they want to go. And the leaders are inspired themselves about where they want to go. And ultimately their inspiration, their energy attracts people in to follow them on that journey. And that the psyche, purpose and vision, people are aligned to the inspire theme. Then great leaders orientate their people behind a plan. So how do we execute them? Well, we reverse engineer from the vision, and we take our, and this is documented in the book, we take our program participants through a process where we deconstruct the 10-year vision into a 3-year vivid vision, leaning on Cameron Hurl's methodology, which is wonderful. And then we deconstruct that vivid vision into 4 key strategic pillars. We undergird those strategic pillars with 1-year goals, and we break those 1-year goals down into 90-day objective and key results. So now we've got an executable plan. The reason I'm here today on this podcast is because this is informed by my vision of the future to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of SMEs to scale with purpose. Everything that I do is intentional and is informed by my vision of the future. Once you have the plan in place, then you look at the processes and systems that you currently have that are going to undergird the success of what you're planning in terms of your scaling ambition. And ultimately, those systems will set you free. And this is where entrepreneurs become challenged, because systems typically aren't sexy. This process stuff isn't sexy. But ultimately, if they examine 3 overarching functions of the business, which is, what are your systems to win the business? What are your systems to deliver the business? And what are your systems to ensure your customer success? And look at where you can get the greatest leverage on that.
Brandon, repeat those 3 slowly so everybody can write these down, because those are really powerful, those 3 that you just said.
Business is, and it's really simple, Gino. There's only three overarching functions of any business. The first is the function of winning the business. And you examine then the systems which ultimately undergird your ability and your capacity to win the business. When you win the business, then you've got to deliver the business. What are the systems you have in place to deliver the business? And when you deliver the business, ultimately, you want to ensure your customer success. And that is a circle in itself. If you are world-class in each of those 3 overarching functions of the business, you will have a customer for life. We call it the CFL methodology, customer for life. Customer has never any reason to leave you. And ultimately, when you have those systems in place from an entrepreneurial perspective, from a leader, founder perspective, it gives you great freedom to continue to expand on your vision. So that's the 5th principle, our processes and systems. Then we get into the 6th one, is performance. And ultimately, those who scale have a clear understanding of the outcomes that they want and will put the objective measurements in place to ensure that they're executing successfully. And we encourage a methodology. I used this in the business for 10 years, of objectives and key results, a methodology developed by Andy Grove back in Intel in the 80s and then popularized by John Doerr in his book, Measure What Matters. We move on then to accelerating the final theme and the final 3 principles. And it's proposition as our 7th principle. Leaders need to understand, what is the need that they're servicing, or what problem are they solving? What is their proposition? What value are they bringing to their customer? I've worked with engineers for the last 20 years, and too often engineers get caught up in the features of what they've developed. They love the latest fluxometer that they have created. And the customer doesn't care. The customer doesn't care. The customer wants to know, what is in this for me? So what pain are you solving, or what gain are you bringing me? Those who scale successfully know that innately and get the customer to tell it in their own voice so that they evangelize to the rest of the world. We then move on to the 8th principle, which is place. Those who scale successfully are not afraid to break new boundaries. They'll move into new territories, new regions, or they'll take their product or service into other industries. And they will ultimately scale into place by building robust partnerships, the ninth principle. And the final principle, I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to take you through this all. The final principle is positive growth culture, bringing all of this together by creating a positive growth culture, a culture that nurtures and cultivates the behaviors that you want to see within the organization. Because every organization has a culture. You have to be deliberately intentional about creating the culture that you want to see. So that's a whistle-stop tour. I've just compressed 400 pages, 20 years of experience into 5 minutes, guys.
Well, Brendan, the irony is you only said 1% of companies scale. I'm shocked that it's even 1% after you went through that list, because I completely agree with everything you've said. I'm tired. I didn't scale in a company. I'm going to work for somebody. I mean, honestly,
it sounds like a lot of work.
It's exhausting. I mean, like an idiot who has 6 kids. What idiot would have 6 kids? Oh, that's right. So I guess I'm into the scaling thing as well. And it's such a challenging thing for myself. And one of the reasons why I'm able to scale multiple businesses is with my partner. Because if I had to do this by myself on an island, I can become the visionary and I have to become the integrator. And I think we do a good job of Jake and myself going back and forth. And I think for those of you out there, if you don't think it's able to do it by yourself, go find somebody that can help you out. Go find somebody that shares your vision. I think that's truly important. Don't sell yourself short. You could probably do it on your own, but I've had such success over the last decade with my partner that he's held me accountable, that he has a vision very similar to mine, but sometimes he takes a different detour, a different route than mine. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. And being able to have somebody on your side is so crucial. I'm trying to think of questions.
Well, there's not a lot of people to talk to about this shit. When you're trying to, grow and scale a company, my wife is interested to an extent on this stuff, but then she's like, can we get back to living as a couple? I don't want to hear about this shit anymore. So it's like, I'm wearing her out, and then she's not in the day to day. So she's hearing about stuff that she gets from a personnel perspective maybe. But then when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, it's like, I think she's yesing me. Yeah. Okay. I got, so it's like, it's like, there's only so many people that, and it's not an ego thing, but are on the level in the organization that you are to speak with. So that creates an isolation challenge and can kill awareness for a leader. I know you got something to say on that.
Absolutely, Jake. You've hit on a wonderful point. It was Jim Rohn said we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And there's research now to support that. And that's why we established a program back in 2020 to bring ambitious leaders who aspire to scale together. And it's incredible what happens amongst that peer group when you get a 10 to 12 CEOs in the one room who are all aspiring to the same thing, all from different industries, but also have that common thread in terms of their ambition to scale. And they ultimately are able to bounce the one thing off, and the challenges that they have off one another, and go through the program. So we take our participants through a year-long program, 1 workshop per month aligned to each of the 10 principles. And it's essentially an instructional guide to scaling. And this is back to your point, Jake. I would have broken somebody's arm 15 years ago to find mentors, coaches, people who were going on the same journey, because you're so right. It's such a lonely place. And especially when you don't know, when you're trying to give energy to actually finding the instructions in the first place. I talk about, as a kid, I loved Lego. Do you guys know, the little blocks?
Dude, I got like 6 Legos on the shelf right now. I got Lord of the Rings. I got Star Wars. We do it for fun. It's something I actually do with my kids. I got a pirate ship in a bottle over there. I'd move it, but it's connected with wires right now. So
yeah, I love Lego. And as a kid, I loved Lego. And when I received a kind of a Lego present at Christmas or birthday at home, I would go to the kitchen, take out the bowls, empty the little plastic wrappers into the bowls, and I would follow the instructions. I would just turn the page. So I wasn't a guy who got a fire engine and the instructions to build a fire engine and scrapped the instructions and went off and built the dinosaur. I followed the instructions to build the fire engine. And I thought when we were writing the book, Claire and I, how do we create the instruction manual, the instruction guide for scaling a business? Because so many leaders give so much energy to trying to find the instructions in the first place. And then they have to go and do the work. So what the book is, and it's a paradox, the name Simple Scaling, it's not simple, but ultimately, the role of any leader is not to make things simpler, but to make things simple. And what we've done in the book is filter out all of the noise around scaling and say to leaders, founders, follow this.
Think about what he just said, folks. He's not making it simple on himself in the beginning. He's making the end product simple for people to follow. This is a big aha moment here. You take the brunt of it on, figure it out. You do the hard work. You don't push it off and say to your team, just figure this shit out. You figure it out so it's easy for the folks to absorb. Then it becomes easy for you. You see that kind of give and take there. It's very important.
I love that.
Wow. We have a double problem with Jake and Gino. We're scaling a business, but we're also scaling a community of people within the business. So there's two cultures going on. But ironically enough, it's really the same culture if you do it the right way. When we onboard our students, we're rather selective with our students. We won't onboard just anybody. So in the short term, you take the hit, but in the longer term, it really helps with the culture and with the development of it. And I think the vision is truly important. We create multifamily entrepreneurs. That's what our mindset is, our slogan is. And we also think people with financial intelligence can change the world for the better. That's what we're driving towards with our entire culture of our company, because we want our employees to invest in our deals personally, so that there's a culture piece from there, because I want them to be bought into the vehicle that we're selling to other people to learn. And also the students have to feel that culture, because when they come to an event, we had an event this weekend, they're all bought in. They feel a culture, beliefs are behavior driven. If they believe they can do it and the community believes in it and they huddle around it, it makes a huge, huge impact. Brendan, before we go to the short answers, a couple of questions on what was your biggest mistakes in scaling your business?
That's another podcast in itself. There are so many, Gino, in the early stages, creating the vision on my own and creating the plan to execute the vision on my own, coming out of the room and saying, brilliant, I've got the plan. Now here, team, go and do the plan. Go and execute to the plan. What is so critically important is that in the last vision that we put in place, which was a 5-year vision back in 2015, and we created our 2020 vision, I spent 1 year interviewing or hosting workshops with every single person in the company. Now, I had clarity over where we wanted to take the business, along with the 2 other shareholders. We had clarity of where we wanted to go, but ultimately we wanted everyone in the company to feel like they had their paint stroke on the canvas, so that they could say, this isn't the vision of those 3 people. I've had a part of this vision. I feel a level of ownership. Also, then when we took the vision and deconstructed the vision, bringing the senior leadership team together, and I took them away. We spent 3 days in Germany and Stuttgart, took them for a benchmarking visit to Mercedes to say, look, Mercedes started as an idea in somebody's head, and look, this is a multi-billion-dollar company now. It all starts with the seed of thought and the belief that you can actually do it. But what I wanted to do is take everyone away and say, here's the vision. Now, as a leadership team, how do we execute on that vision? So it became our plan, not my plan pushed down, but it became our plan. And again, that seeds a huge amount of accountability, Gino, whenever it comes to actually starting to execute. So, get people involved, have clarity of where you want to go. The leader has to have that, has to have that mental picture, and that, they must be inspired themselves. That's why I said, take time out of the business, go out into the countryside with your notepad, with your journal, take time out and really give yourself that headspace to dream and to create that vision for the future that you want. Because I always say to leaders, there's nobody waiting at the door to say, look, Gino, when you have a little minute there, I've got a wonderful vision for your future in 10 years' time. Nobody's doing that. So if you don't do that yourself, then we just end up feeling like we're taking punches every day. When you have that vision and clarity of why, unearthing your purpose, then ultimately when you do take the punches, you can revisit the vision and go, aha, that's why I'm taking the punches. So making sure you get that level of ownership. Also, when you're going into new markets, spend time researching those markets. We too often followed customer leads. So, we ended up spending a lot of years in the Middle East because we serviced some inquiries, some emails that come in. We didn't sit back initially and say the Middle East is going to be a strategic region for us. We were 3 or 4 years in when we realized, my goodness, this has consumed a huge amount of time and effort over the last 3 or 4 years. If we did do this again, North America, interestingly, was the last major export region for us to target. If we were doing it again strategically, we would have gone to North America first. English speaking, the demand for a product was there, but also be careful not to chase those leads. Be careful not to be flattered by distributors or potential partners who want to sell your product or service. Do your research within those specific markets, and ensure when you create the vision, you give an insight to the others within the leadership team, help them to, encourage them to put their paint stroke on it, and ensure that it becomes our plan, not your plan, pushed down.
Very cool. Gino was mentioning something a minute ago about our community. And I think our relationship was interesting because I was in the marketplace that we first started investing in. Gino had a formal education in multifamily. And I saw it this weekend at our event. There were people coming together that were stuck. One of them may have been in a market that was maybe more emerging and ready to go for multifamily. Other folks were in markets that were more established, California, New York, that were looking to jump into other markets. So I just want to challenge everyone to not be afraid to put yourself out there, get to network people when you're at the events. I used to go to events. I'd sit there with my arms crossed. I didn't want to speak to anybody. I thought I was too cool. Chill out, drop the ego, and start speaking to some people. And I saw beautiful things happen this weekend. So I'm challenging everybody because I've made that mistake. Don't do that. Be open to partnerships, because I'm telling you right now, our multifamily business wouldn't be here if the two of us would not have come together. And sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we subscribe to the belief of who, not how. So when you're creating this vision for the future, don't get caught up in the how. And I would be guilty of that. I want to know, and we all do, because fear manifests when we don't know, when we don't have certainty over the future, and we want to know all the nuts and bolts of where we're going and how we're going to get there. Resist that urge to get bogged down into the how when you're creating your vision for the future, because the who, not how, is so critically important. And I think of the analogy of building a house. When I was building my home 7 or 8 years ago, I'm not a roofer, I'm not a glazer, I'm not a block layer, but I created this wonderful mental image of the dream home that I wanted to build. I took that to an architect, and over the course of years, I built up a picture, traveled the world, brought together collages of things that I wanted. I brought that to an architect. He brought it to life, and then contractors, specialist contractors who have the who for the how, they then brought it to life. And it's no different. We seem to have this mental barrier when it comes to a company. We'll do this for a dream car. We'll think about it. We'll dream about it. We'll even custom build it. We don't worry about how it's going to be put together. We'll do it for homes, but whenever it comes to our businesses, we seem to take a different approach. It's exactly the same. There are specialists out there for every single function that your business needs today. There are specialists out there who would love to have the opportunity to work within your business if you create the vision for the future and that clarity, that roadmap.
100%. Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor.
Are you looking for ways to improve your life?
Here at Jake and Gino, our mission is to empower students through financial education and the vehicle of multifamily investing.
Yes, Jake. We agree that a person with financial intelligence can change the world for the better.
We've created our proprietary 3-step framework, buy right, manage right, and finance right, that we teach to our community. This framework, along with education, our one-on-one mentorship, on-site boot camps, and the amazing community, has propelled our students to massive success.
We've all been there. We've had so many students that have been able to shift their mindset, overcome limiting beliefs, and set a clear path to achieve their goals. Whether you're currently fixing and flipping, wholesaling, or buying single-family rentals, and you know that multifamily investing is the right vehicle for you, I encourage you to visit jakeandgeno.com/apply to schedule your complimentary consultation with our team And I want to let you know this isn't a high pressure sales call. It's really just a discovery call to get to know each other better and see if we're a good fit for working together. And if for any reason we're not a good fit, our team has tons of resources we will share with you to help you along your journey.
If you're ready to stop spinning your wheels, go to jakeandgeno.com/apply and schedule your call now.
All right, we are back. So let's sort of piggyback off of what you just said. There's people out there to help, but where is this stuff in modern society? You know, college courses. I think there's a huge lack of information and attention put on to scaling a business. Everything is leading up the ladder of W-2 employee, from colleges to even a lot of the business books out there are, ways to, improve the business, but there's very little on scale. But this is sort of the secret ingredient to allowing you to go from a solopreneur to a true entrepreneur. Why is that? I mean, I have no idea. I just think there's a huge gap here. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and it's a societal paradigm. Think of the way we grew up. Whenever I grew up in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, and for my parents, they didn't go to school. They had to leave school early, and for them, as I'm one of five, it was all about being educated. So it turns out I became a qualified accountant. I have a brother who's a judge. I have another brother who's a quantity surveyor. I have two sisters who are in the public sector. They
super proud parents, right? Judges, accountants, everything you want. Check the box.
Yeah, exactly. And for them, it was education was a way of actually breaking out of a lot of the troubles that pervaded Northern Ireland at the time. So there was a societal paradigm then, and ultimately we are guilty. And this is where, as parents, you mentioned you had 6 kids, Gino, we're guilty of, we need to be careful of what we say to our kids. What are we encouraging them to do? Are we encouraging them into law because we want a lawyer? Are we encouraging them into medicine because we want a doctor? Are we encouraging them into accountancy because we want an accountant, because we want to say that? Or are we encouraging them to pursue their dream? I know kids of parents who are passionate about music, but they're doing finance, they're doing accountancy, and they're not accountants, they're musicians, but it doesn't suit the parents' agenda,
the parents' vision, the parents' vivid vision for the child.
Absolutely, Jake. And this is where we go back to culture, and we go back to examining our paradigm, and again back to psyche principle 1. And we spend a lot of time on lead self first before you lead others, before you lead an organization. What does that mean, lead self first? Well, it's examining yourself, examining your ego, examining the inner chat, the inner dialogue, and really stripping that all back and aligning yourself to your true purpose, and ultimately letting your kids follow their dream, not your dream.
Oh, man.
I challenge you both to think about this thought also. A lot of the world lives in scarcity mindset. So who are you to scale a business? You want to be the next Jeff Bezos or the next Zuckerberg or whatever? Most people don't think in those terms. My father was an immigrant. That one restaurant was safety. We can't scale. You're going to get in trouble. You want more? Why would you want more? You created a business, and myself, I've been checking myself for the last few years. My mindset when I had the restaurant for those 20 years was I wanted a business to be able to provide for my family. Now, what the hell does that mean? That's so unclear. It's not even funny. That's a scarcity mindset. You shouldn't create a business to provide for your family. That's not the only thing you should be doing. You should be providing for other families as well. And once you start thinking about that, all of a sudden, hey, now I have a duty to scale because I have an amazing product. I've got an amazing pizza. This thing should be in every Stop and Shop and every Publix grocery. But I didn't think that. And most of us
letting the world down now. Shit.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm coming from a place of scarcity and from it's just about me to all of a sudden you become financially free and start thinking about things, and you start getting bigger pictures, because there's only 2 ways, as Tony Robbins says, is to build a bigger building. You either build a bigger one or you tear everyone else's down. And that's such scarcity mindset. And I think if you don't have that abundance mindset to be able to say, I want to grow this, That's why I'm even shocked there's still 1% out here. I'm not, as I'm listening to this podcast, I'm like, wow, it took me years. And that's why you're not going to see a lot of 25 and 30-year-olds, young people scaling businesses, because it's very challenging. You need years of, I don't want to say wisdom. I'm not saying it's not done. It has been done a lot, but I can see people who get older in life, they've gotten a lot of life experiences. They've led themselves. Their ego is should be a lot less than it was when they were younger. It wasn't about me. It's about who can I provide value to? And those lessons, I think, take years and years to develop in most of us.
Again, I agree with all of that, Gino. And what I say, again, take the example of you guys, two wonderful guys creating a fantastic community. Why should people only have access to that community because of their postcode, because of their zip code? When you start to think that way and say, well, the only impediment to this is ultimately us. We've decided that actually we're going to operate our community within these zip codes. But ultimately, when you go back, and this is why the retirement speech and that process of really connecting, really getting a feeling for what this is like, because ultimately we're emotional animals, we're emotional beings. And when you connect to the feeling of what this could be like in the future, ultimately that is so potent in terms of navigating through the challenges. The reality is life's challenging, business is challenging, but isn't it better for it to, for you to face the challenges whilst leaning into something that's really worthwhile, that's really purposeful, that's creating opportunities, not only for you to grow as a leader, but also for your teams to grow, for your organizations to grow, for your community and society to grow. And the more conscious leadership there is, ultimately, it's like dropping a pebble into a pond. You get this ripple effect and it just moves out and out and out and out. And ultimately then impact, and we're seeing this directly with the participants going through our program. We have had presence from the wives of the leaders who have gone on the program to say our relationship's better, the relationship that he has with the kids is better, the relationship he has with his father's better, who maybe founded the business. He has more energy and passion for the business. The team are more bought in. There's more people now attracted to what he's doing. There are no downsides to this, because ultimately, when you accept that we're going to face challenges, whatever we do, let's make sure that those challenges are positively orientated towards something special and something that ultimately a lot of people can benefit from.
I believe you referred to it as a growth culture before. Any tips or best practices on creating a growth culture within your organization?
Starts with the leader. So what is a positive growth culture look like? Well, back to the kind of the scarcity mindset or abundance mindset. Is it a culture that seeks to make others stars, so you become the star maker, not seeking the limelight,
the rainmaker?
So, are you elevating others or are you putting others down? So, again, it's paradoxical, but what we know is that the more we elevate others, the more successful we become. The more stars that we make, if we assume that role of the star maker, ultimately the more successful we become. So you have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset, an open mindset, so that you're curious to learn and grow. And people who are listening to this podcast are clearly curious to learn and grow. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening to the podcast. They're listening to the podcast because they're hoping to pick up something that will resonate, something that they can implement and take back. So, those leaders who are curious to learn and grow, an open mindset rather than closed, an outward looking mindset rather than inward, not about me and protectionist. It's outward. What can I do? What can I contribute? And ultimately, everybody takes their tone from the leader. So if the leaders, why are you reading? Why are you listening to that? That's rubbish. If the leader's not looking after themselves, if they don't have the kind of good practices and disciplines, good behaviors within meetings, a good way of positive way of communicating, giving people psychological safety to challenge them for the sake of the organizational vision because of their ego, then ultimately the tone for the organizational culture is set. So we talk about, don't laminate your values, live your values. So take them off the wall and live them, and call out some of the practices here, some of the practical things you can do to seed a positive growth culture is on a weekly basis. And this is something we always encourage and something we did within the business. We had wins of the week. and we deliberately called out behaviors which were in line with the values that we had set. So we would seek from the managers right across the business, share with us something somebody's done within the business, which is a behavior which is aligned to one of our values. And let's call that out at the end of the week. So what the leaders can do is continue to illuminate the brilliance, call out the brilliance, but give those a tap on those who aren't acting in accordance with the values. Give them a tap on the shoulder and say, Gino, that's not the way we do things around here. See what you did there? That's not what we do around here. In this situation, this is the way we conduct ourselves. And you continue to, again, back to the raising kids, we praise the behavior we want to see, and we end up calling out the behavior we don't want to see. But ultimately, and I come back to the parenting, just to finish on this, and I use the CAM analogy a lot for parenting. And I wish I'd known it. My eldest now is 19. She'll be 19 this year. I wish I'd known it whenever she was a kid. Communicate, advise, listen, and model, and modeling being the most impactful. So let's say you advocate a fun culture, but every Monday morning you're dragging yourself through the office door and you grunt at your receptionist. How is it aligned to a fun culture?
If you like Neanderthal stuff, or you're like, who's that guy on Instagram, the Liver King? See this crazy man yet? This stuff's great, because I actually I had some corporate experience back in the day, and I was working for a pharmaceutical manufacturer. And before, you guys may have heard this, there was a governmental reform, and I think it was 2008, called the Sunshine Act. And it just literally ran through the pharma culture and destroyed it. And the culture went from amazing to terrible literally overnight. And the thing I do remember, though, is there's two guys that I worked for. They were managers, and they were both star makers when I first got into it. And in that culture and organization, both these gentlemen had so many people rise up, to promotions that worked for them, and actually I'll pace them over time, but they literally were the enablers to so many people's career advancement and development, and they were beloved for it. In addition, they were both really high performers in two totally different ways. One of them was a little bit more of a micromanager. One of them was a little bit more, hey, make it happen, big man kind of thing. But they both found a way to get it done in their own ways, but they were both star makers. So that really resonated with me. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, and that this is something that probably does not get discussed very often.
And one example which you guys will be very familiar with is Satya Nadella, the third CEO of Microsoft. And look at his predecessor, Steve Ballmer, and the success of Microsoft at that stage was, it was bumping along, it was kind of facing some challenges. Satya Nadella came in, and within a number of months, a very, very different management style, leadership style to Steve Ballmer. And actually, he realized very early on, and he cites this within his own books, Hit Refresh, which is a wonderful book if people want to learn a little bit more around positive growth culture. But he realized that he had this amazing assortment, a boardroom of individual brilliance, but actually collectively, there was no glue. They didn't know one another. And he took them all away for 3 or 4 days, and this wasn't about work. This was about getting to know one another, sharing personal stories, really, really getting under the bonnet of everyone's origin story, and connecting with one another at an emotional level, a personal level. And ultimately, when they went back, now you're starting to create a tribe. You're starting to form that glue which bonds people, which creates that discretionary effort when somebody's looking a handout. And he has scaled Microsoft significantly. Their market cap has just has grown significantly through the various initiatives and actions he has taken to develop a positive growth culture.
Wonderful. Two more quick ones for you here. Let's get under your hood a little bit and find out what makes you tick. Any habit that has led to your success, something that you do on a daily, weekly basis?
I'm a big habits guy. I'm very disciplined. So I have a mantra: win the morning, win the day. So I'm an early riser. I kind of subscribe to early start, typically 5 o'clock. And I became actually a Wim Hof method instructor a number of years ago. I went on a retreat, just was bowled away by the impact of the ice baths, the clarity that I had afterwards, clears out the mental clutter. You feel energized, you feel focused, you just feel refreshed. The breathing method, just phenomenal in terms of resetting every day. So the habit that I have every morning, waking up, and I do 4 rounds of Wim Hof method breathing. I'll do some stretching. I'll always read. I'll read for 20 minutes, half an hour in the mornings, and I tend to do the kind of eat the frog, the Brian Tracy analogy. I'll carve out 2 hours in the morning just to do that, my priority task for the day, so I get it out of the road early.
Plow through before your mind realizes what's going on.
Exactly.
That's I'm 100% with you on that. And Gino, I think we can split this up. I'm never going to do an ice bath. I'm having a totally shut down, non-growth, whatever the hell you want to call it, shit outlook on this. I'm never going to do it. But I will tell you this: I'm like my typical day is like 6 to 6, 6 to 7. I'm kind of leaning because there's a couple times where I've had to get more done. So I get up at like 5:30, and it makes a huge difference, but I'm not willing to trade that extra hour in the evening yet. Because it's just relaxation time. So it's interesting. I may be moving it up. I don't know, but Gino, you're gonna have to be the ice bath guy. Okay, you're gonna have to be the superhero for our team when it comes.
Well,
to
what I'll challenge you guys both to do, and your listeners, is test this for 20 days and take the cold shower challenge for 20 days. So at the end of it, go with me, Jake. At the end of your warm shower, we talk about in business. So why is it only 1%? Well, ultimately, scaling's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and it's about building resilience, and we can train for resilience. And part of that training we can learn by actually overriding the mind. If we decide in the mornings to turn the warm shower to cold, you're going to be hit with this inner voice that says, get out of there. Don't be listening to that stupid Irish guy who told you to take a cold shower. Just step out now. Your fight or flight mechanism will kick in. You'll trigger your sympathetic nervous system, and you will start to breathe a little bit faster. Once you focus on the breath and really focus on an extended exhale, and your body becomes adjusted to the cold. And ultimately, you're training the 3 pillars of the Wim Hof method to train your mindset through the cold exposure and through the breath control, and just focus on an extended exhale when you're in that shower. And over the next 20 days, go from 15 seconds, Jake, and build it up to 2 minutes, and literally test it. And if at the end of 20 days, if you don't feel any better, then you can go back to your normal routine. But I guarantee that you will feel better at the end of 20 days. You'll become evangelist for this.
You ready for the volley back? You ready? It just went across the net. So I was just reading this morning on CNBC or something. They were talking about Steve Jobs when he would go on vacations. His team was loving the first 2 or 3 days. By the 3rd day, he was wearing them out with phone calls, because then the ideas are coming. We're going to take over a music company. We're going to do this to the iPad, blah, 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 blah. For me personally, there's 2 venues where I get creativity and ideas from. Number one is I get the hell out of my house, because like you, I'm a disciplined freak. It's like the same day over and over again, and I've seen good results from it. I need to break the chain. And when we go out, we go on vacations, whether it's a weekend or whatever, minimum one idea or spark comes from that. So it needs to be planned and scheduled. Otherwise it won't happen. And we'll see a decrease in creativity. The second thing is showers. I don't shower first thing in the morning. Typically it's like a 10 or 11 o'clock in the day sort of thing. So that is the time where I take a very warm shower. It literally, I don't know if it relaxes or calms me, but it shuts things down. And not to get weird with it, but I'm typically calling Geno when I got out saying, dude, you got to listen to this. And then I'm like, I think I solved something. So I can't sacrifice the creativity for something that may be, like more strength, resistance, whatever building that it does, the shower thing. Plus I feel great already. So I can't give away the creativity for the shower. So I'm a limited mindset on that for sure.
And my challenge to you, Jake, is don't in terms of the stay in for the length of the warm shower and when the creative ideas are flowing.
Oh shit, man!
But I'm asking for 15 seconds at the end. 15 seconds. Everybody,
you can't give me 15 seconds, dude. Come on, man. Good point. All right, you were talking reading before. Book recommendation. Anything that has added value to your life in the last year or so?
Yeah, I tend to read a lot like you guys. I'm a podcast host, and I bring on guests whom I've really enjoyed their book. There's one book that I gift the most, and it's The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. A wonderful book, The 4 Agreements. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personal. Don't make assumptions, and simply do your best. The second book, which I gift the most, is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. He wrote it back in 1903, and it's as profound today as it was back then. And essentially, the thesis of that book is when we really tune into how we think, that determines our thoughts, determine how we feel, determines how we act, and ultimately determines the results that we get. So every result is ultimately, it's the fruit of a thought. Every act is the blossom of a thought. And when we start to understand that we can change how we feel by changing our thought patterns, then it has an immeasurable impact in our lives. So
that book kicked off Napoleon Hill, which kicked off Tony Robbins.
Yeah,
so I think it's all started somewhere.
It
right?
all comes back to the same origin, you know. And
Yeah.
people, the Stoics were writing. Marcus Aurelius was writing about this
Yes.
thousands and thousands of years ago. It's just, you know, those guys are contemporaries and they have a modern slant on it. But the wisdom within within both of those books is phenomenal. One last book, and it's a thin book, but again, every word is gold in this book. It's called U Squared by Price Pritchett.
Check it out. All right. Before Geno wraps here, best way for folks to get a hold of you and the organization and to find out more.
So our website is simplescaling.com. You can get me on LinkedIn, Brendan Mcgurgan on LinkedIn, and you'll find Simple Scaling on Instagram and Facebook. The book is actually, it's an Amazon #1 bestseller now. You'll get the book on Amazon, Simple Scaling, 10 Proven Principles to 10x Your Business. And also the ScaleX Insider podcast can be found on Spotify and Apple.
Geno, the ball is in your court.
Who's taking a shower tomorrow morning? 52 degrees. 15 seconds, my friend.
Listen,
this is
safe. That ain't safe.
Geno.
This has been an amazing podcast. I want everyone to write this quote down that I heard in the show. It's the war on talent. It's not a war on talent. It's a war on consciousness. And I truly believe that as a leader, you know, Brendan discusses vision and talks about vision. You need to have a clear vision yourself, because we don't lack, you know, the motivation. We usually have the fear, right? That's what we have. And that's what holds us back. And I think those 3 points that he made, winning businesses, delivering the business, and then ensuring the customer's success. If we can all focus on that in our business, we will have an amazing business, an amazing life. And read the book. It's amazing. He talks about mindset, growth mindset, fixed mindset. He goes over the 10 pillars. We went over them real quick in the podcast. It doesn't do it justice. Go through the book, look at the 10 pillars. And if you're at an inflection point in your life and you're stuck and you're like, I need to get to that next inflection point, pick up the book.
Pick up the book. Guys, this was great. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you today. Take care.